Assistance Commission. Thank you for joining our FAFSA Simplification webinar series. Today we are going to be talking about packaging and financial aid offers. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we go ahead and kick things off. This session is being recorded and it will be posted on our site within a couple of weeks. If you or any of your colleagues on the line are having trouble through audio, you can always use the call me option on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It gives you a number you can dial and receive audio through your phones. Throughout the webinar, you can post your questions live and get them answered. I have a variety of colleagues on the line willing to answer your questions as we go ahead and continue on through the presentation. Continuing education credits and professional development hours will be available for today's webinar. We'll have a link posted for a survey at the end of the webinar. And we have a variety of other recorded webinars on our PD on demand section of our page. Feel free to view those and watch any of our recordings from topics including FAFSA simplification, PACE, etc. We have a variety of things that we talk about. So I'd like to have this slide up here for some of our folks who may be joining us for the first time and maybe are unfamiliar with who we are as an agency. Our mission is to provide Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education, whatever that might be, beyond high school accessible and affordable. The state of Illinois also, the Illinois Student Assistance Commission administers a variety of scholarships and grants. Some you may be familiar with would be the special education teacher tuition waiver, our veterans programs, nursing education scholarships, a lot of programs that we administer here at the state. And then myself and my variety of colleagues on the line here, the professional development team, we do quite a bit of offerings on navigating the financial aid process. We offer sessions for our underrepresented students, as well as sessions on understanding the loan process, as well as some forgiveness programs. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about some foundational packaging principles. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the delays from the Department of Education as we all kind of navigate through this difficult financial aid cycle this year. Talk now then a little bit about financial aid offers and understanding them, and then I'll talk a little bit about borrowing responsibility for students. And then I'll walk through a little bit of a financial aid comparison tool that we have on our student portal site that's very helpful in navigating some of our students with understanding how they sort of organize financial aid offers. Okay, we'll go ahead and dive into our packaging principles. So the cost of attendance here, these are the various elements that are included in a school's cost of attendance. This is where institutions will establish their cost for a specific enrollment period for students, and they use a variety of categories that you are seeing here, and we're going to use this as well to package their aid. Some of these terms have changed with FAFSA simplification, but they essentially mean the same thing, but you may notice some additions if this is the first time you've kind of looked at some of these sort of items in the cost of attendance. So we have tuition and fees, right? That's money going directly to the institutions. That hasn't changed. Food and housing, that's been renamed, right? Used to be called room and board. Now it's called food and housing. Again, me, myself, the training team, if you say room and board, we get what you mean, right? It's okay. It'll take us, I'm sure, some time to get used to these new terms. Books, course materials, supplies, and equipment needs to be as well in the terms of allowable cost in the COA. Transportation expenses, that needs to include travel between school and from work, etc. Miscellaneous personal expenses for folks that, may be living on campus and have some toiletry items that they need. And then we have some additional allowances available to qualifying students. This is going to, of course, lead us to some of the exceptions you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen, where institutions have some flexibility in what they include if students are in one of those exception categories, meaning they may be less than half time enrolled. They have a correspondence study that they are associated with. Perhaps they are incarcerated, or for any kind of professional judgment reason, again, where the financial aid administrator is judge, jury, and executioner of those policies, can, of course, mitigate what would then be in a student's cost of attendance. What are those additional allowances? It's what we're seeing here on the bottom portion of the allowable cost, right? We're thinking about dependent care. I like to think about what it may cost then for students to have 3 meals a day. That'd be dependent care, for example. Any cooperative education costs, perhaps it's study abroad expenses to specific students, any disability-related expenses, or federal student loan origination fees, as well as professional licensure costs for some specific students, depending on the program of study they have. I know in my school, I had a lot of teachers that I was friends with when I went to North Central, and I know they had some kind of extra costs for their student teaching and getting sort of certified in some of those regards. That would also be included in that student's cost of attendance. So packaging. So once institutions have received the FAFSA information, those applications from their students, right? They get those institutional student information records, they can begin packaging, which is the process of offering a student aid without exceeding a student's financial need. Now, this is going to, of course, vary from school to school, and everyone kind of has a little bit more of their own individual processes. When packaging, we know that the need of a student, the aid they receive, cannot exceed the cost of attendance, and administrators will have various ways of mitigating different kinds of awards to ensure that that does not happen. So the administrator, they're going to determine the best combination of aid to meet their need by, of course, using what they are allowed to in terms of statutes and any sort of regulatory limits. The available resources at the college or university, you may have students who are full MAP and Pell eligible. Maybe they've taken full advantage of, say, a federal supplemental grant, but they may have some additional institutional resources and aid they can give that student. They're going to balance that depending on the resources that they have available to them. Institutional policies as well, what they're going to be allowed to do for, say, professional judgment and how they kind of go about that process. It's all going to kind of vary from institution to institution. So we'll hit the nail right on the head here in terms of all the processing delays that I'm sure many of us on the call are familiar with the new financial aid cycle that we all sort of are a part of. FAFSAs, though, are being processed now, if you have not heard already. The backlog of all the applications, they had about 6 million backlogged FAFSAs that they were trying to go through. And I think the last I checked a couple days ago, they were at about 4.5 million FAFSAs that have been processed. And I think they had about 6 million backlogs from since the time the application opened. So the backlog of those applications should be complete soon, and they should be up to date. They said early April here, so it could be any day now. It could be by the end of the week. We'll just have to monitor some alerts from the Department of Education. But now that FAFSAs are being processed, ICERs are being sent out now, right? So institutions are starting to receive that information for students so they can hopefully start, again, packaging aid so they can get aid offer letters out as soon as possible. There have been some additional glitches and errors that the Department of Ed has been announcing over the last couple of weeks. The first being that any ICERs processed prior to March 21st for specifically dependent students who were required to report asset and investment information, but maybe they weren't asked those questions, for example, but they were supposed to, those are going to have to be redone. Now, there's no timeline or table for when that's going to happen, but there was an announcement from the Department of Ed that those are going to have to be redone for those specific students for those processed prior to March 21st. Additional guidance over the weekend that I just sort of read this morning and got kind of caught up with, the direct data exchange, which is the new and improved way of streamlining federal tax information onto the application. There's been some glitches there as well in terms of some education credits and some of the income tax portions that have been reported incorrectly by the tool. That needs to be sorted out as well, but we'll wait for more guidance on that. But just know that these things are kind of coming out on a day-to-day basis. I know it's hard for a lot of us to stay up to date for all this new information, but can get through this together. Now, because of this, they have delayed the FAFSA correction process as well, right? Even if students have gotten an email saying their FAFSAs have been successfully processed, even if they're able to log in, right, they're able to have access to their FAFSA submission summaries. They have this all processed, but now they know they need to make corrections. That process has not been opened quite yet. Those corrections are going to be delayed until mid-April. Even if you have students who have successfully processed FAFSAs, they want to make corrections. They know they made mistakes. That's a lot of the students that we work with here. That will not be open until the middle of this month. So we're waiting on that. And of course, because of all of this, we know that packaging offers are going to be delayed, right? Hopefully, maybe early on to the end of the month, it could be. We know that many institutions are delaying their national college decision days because of all of these processing delays. You can think about the truncated time a student can get an offer letter and make an informed decision about their future. The National College Attainment Association, NACAC, has got a full list of all the institutions across the country that have delayed their decision deadlines. So I would take a look at that. encourage other institutions to do the same, as these offer letters being sent to students are going to be heavily delayed into late spring. So a little more basic information here about the process for packaging financial aid. Of course, students have to complete a financial aid application. Again, this could be a FAFSA, or it could be an alternative application for Illinois financial aid here in our state. Now, once that happens, the school is going to receive what they call an institutional student information record, also known as an ISER. Or again, it could be the alternative application student record. That's going to have an official student aid index. Remember, this is the new name of the expected family contribution. That's gone. It's now called the student aid index. So once they get that, they can then determine their need-based aid. The school's then going to package the student's aid using all of those cost of attendance elements, any sort of other financial assistance that they are aware of at the time of packaging. Once they do that, they'll go ahead and send it to students, where students will review their offers, hopefully get the time to make an informed decision, a good cost benefit sort of analysis for themselves about what's the best institution for them. And then they can accept or decline that financial aid offer. Schools like to hear either way what's the case on that. So I always tell students, right, I mean, no matter what, if you get 5, 6 offer letters, give each institution an answer, right? If you've decided on one institution, great. Let the other ones know that you have declined. So how we calculate financial aid hasn't changed a ton, just maybe slightly here. They're going to follow the same process, though, from school to school on determining a financial need, right? This doesn't change depending on where the institution, where the student goes in terms of their institution. We still take the full cost of attendance, right? We're going to minus it by the student aid index, minus it also by any other financial assistance that is aware to the administrators at the time of packaging. And I'll have other sort of graphics that shows you a little bit more details about what that looks like. That makes up a student's financial need. Common question we get when we've seen this slide now is that, hey, Tommy, listen, I know now with the new student aid index that can be a negative number. And I can remember my elementary, junior high math days, right? When you subtract a positive number, subtract a negative number, it turns into a positive. So how does that work? They treat negative SAIs as a 0 for purposes of calculating financial needs. So this is kind of an easy way they do it. If there's a negative SAI, it would just be cost of attendance minus 0, etc. And that, of course, brings up a student's financial need. So from student and family resources perspective here, in terms of financial need, these are funds required by a student to pay for college costs in excess of the amount that the student and family can afford to pay. Right? This is where they have sort of that limited budget. That's sort of the purpose of the student aid index. It's supposed to be that approximate financial resource to make up to pay for their college. And whatever that gap is the student and family's financial need. General rule when packaging, right? A student's aid cannot exceed a student's financial need. If that does happen, the administrator will do a variety of things. They may reduce an institutional award. They may, not offer loans. It could be a variety of things to drop a specific award to ensure that the aid they're getting offered does not exceed that total cost of attendance. Important point to keep in mind as well, especially when we're dealing with our first generation college students, is that when students demonstrate financial need, that does not mean that their entire cost of attendance is going to be met, right? Financial aid programs are going to have their own rules regarding eligibility. They're not eligible for all need-based aid in that regard either. That's a common misconception that I deal with students all the time. If they're eligible for MAP and Pell, they think they're going to be eligible for a bunch of other institutional need-based aid and that they're going to get all their cost of attendance met. And we know as professionals who are veterans in this field, that often is not the case. Student financial aid here, this is money from a source other than themselves or the family that is intended to assist with the cost of attending college. We break this down in a couple of ways. We talk about gift aid, and gift aid is a literal gift to the student. I tell them all the time, think about a birthday card you get in the mail from grandma or uncle or aunt. That 10, 20 bucks you get, great, that's a gift. You don't got to pay that back. That's yours now. That comes in 2 forms. We describe them as grants and scholarships. Grants typically more need-based, right? We're thinking of MAP and Pell in this situation. And then scholarships, which could be more merit-based. That could come from institutions. It could also come from outside organizations and local communities as well. Self-help aid, this is where the students kind of have to do a little bit more work to get this aid in terms of maybe being eligible for work study. or they can work through a federal program job. It's like any other job, and any money they receive in that federal work-study job doesn't count against them for financial aid purposes. And then loans, of course, a lot of us are familiar with loans, money that students have to borrow and repay back. Now, need-based financial aid is awarded based on, again, a student's financial need, based upon that calculation now with the student aid index. And a non-need-based award depends on the rules of the program, right? For those scholarships, right? We know folks that have gotten scholarships because they're 6'5" or because they're left-handed. I mean, there's a variety of different kind of unique eligibility rules for specific non-need-based programs. So it's all going to vary depending on where that source of that program is from. So this is a kind of a basic financial need calculation example. I'm going to have a variety of other values to show you later in the presentation. But we take Sally here, for example. She is a dependent student attending Superman University in Metropolis, Illinois. In the fall of 2024, she's going to be a full-time student. So her cost of attendance for the year is going to be $35,000, and her student aid index is 0. So to calculate her need, right, it's those bubbles that we kind of talked about earlier. You take the cost of attendance, we're minusing it by the SAI, and any other financial assistance made aware to the administrator at the time of packaging. So we know for Sally, with a 0 SAI, she's a full need student here, right? That $35,000 is going to be her financial need. The other bullets that we're going to talk about later, you'll see in a little bit more detail, and hopefully it makes some more sense. So what can she expect to receive, right? Again, all depending on need, and the colleges are going to consider all available ways of aid to try and meet Sally's financial need. But again, this is not always going to be guaranteed, especially for grant and need-based money. A lot of times it's including, borrowed money as well. So we know we have the cost of attendance. The SCI is the approximate financial resources of Sally and her family. The other financial assistance is where we get sort of all of these other type of programs that we may be familiar with in terms of MAP, Pell, institutional scholarships, loans, etc. The financial need is what's left over, right? How do you mitigate that gap, right? What's coming out of pocket for Sally and her family? So let's go ahead and put some more, in a couple more slides, I'll do that. Some examples here of other financial assistance. What does this mean? Right, again, it's anything known to the financial aid administrator prior to packaging due to enrollment, right? At that time, what could this be? This could be grant aid. This could be MAP or Pell. Could be other institutional scholarships that they're going to offer her. Educational loans, right? Direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans would count here. Any sort of net earnings from need-based employment. This is federal work study, for example. Any sort of employer tuition reimbursement that they would receive. Tuition and fee waivers. You could think about in the state of Illinois, right? This could be special education teacher tuition waiver. This could also be veterans program benefits that they're going to have. That would be something that would be included here. Or any sort of fellowships or assistantships that give them aid. All is going to be considered here in other financial assistance. I want to talk a little bit about specific campus-based programs first here. The first one on our left-hand side is the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant for our undergraduate students who demonstrate the most financial need. A lot of times when I talk with students, I don't really tell them to worry about this because this is money that's coming directly from the federal government to institutions themselves and is really included in their institutional aid, designed for this money set aside for the neediest of their students coming to their institutions here. The award is going to vary depending on the institution and how much they're receiving and how much they're going to award. The eligibility is going to be based on their Pell eligibility though, right? The lowest SAI values is who this is designed for those students. It's kind of why they have made the SAI a negative value. We had a lot of these 0 EFC students out there, and the data was determining, all right, well, how do I determine out of these giant group of 0 EFC students, who are my actual neediest of students? Hence, comes around the negative SAI. Oh, I've got this category of 0 folks that would be the neediest of students. They're awarded a negative SAI. And they would be someone expected to maybe receive then a FSEOG grant. Federal work study here could be for undergraduate or graduate students here. There really is no specific award limit. That's going to depend on the institution. And it does not require that priority be given to students with exceptional need, right? This have to be sort of any sort of eligibility here. It'll be kind of communicated from the institution that they can take advantage of federal work study. They apply for that job on their own. They receive a paycheck like anybody else. They have to go through the interview process here. But really, any of those funds just doesn't count against them then for purposes of financial aid. So that's now all going to be dealt with and solely with the financial aid office at that institution and the students who are applying. Order of priority here, right? FSA, they have to consider other aid when awarding campus-based programs. They can reduce these programs, and typically these are the first programs they would reduce if there's an over award, because we know that the award cannot exceed the cost of attendance. Again, they're going to give this higher priority to the neediest of students. We're thinking of our negative SAI folks here. Other schools do it differently. Sometimes they award an equal proportion to each student who's just demonstrated need. That is all, again, solely dependent upon what the FAA decides and the policies of that institution. So in the state of Illinois here, typically, right, when we package students here, the foundations is Pell Grant is going to be the first source of aid consider because it can be applied to anything in the cost of attendance. This is for most. But here in the Illinois, MAP grant is applied before Pell. Reason being is because MAP can only be applied towards tuition and fees. So they apply MAP right away towards those tuition and fees because we know that Pell can cover other elements of the cost of attendance. So just a little bit more details added to the packaging order here. This is where the student's total financial aid and other resources we know cannot exceed, but they're going to start with the cost of attendance, minus it by the SAI. MAP is actually applied first here in our state, as we talked about, because it goes towards tuition and fees. Pell would be next. That can go to anything in the cost of attendance. And then some examples of other financial assistance that we talked about earlier. Campus-based programs. This could be FSCOG, federal work study. We know we have direct loans in here as well, right? Subsidized, unsubsidized, or plus loans if that's applicable to that student in that family, equal to be the remaining need coming out of pocket for the student. So I want to return to Sally here. We sort of had that foundational example here, and I want to throw some more values in there just to give you a better idea and more concrete example of how this would work, right? You're seeing a variety of programs here that Sally is eligible for. So I'll start with the top of the cost of attendance. We know that value. We're minusing it by the SAI. We know she's a full need student. So what's going to be included in this other financial assistance categories? MAP, we know she's full eligible for MAP and Pell. Those will be applied first. Superhero scholarship, this was made aware to the financial aid administrator before packaging. Perhaps this is an institutional award. That would be included. And Sally is also going to be eligible for federal work study. She can choose to do this if she wants to. She doesn't have to, but because she's eligible, the institution's offering it in the offer letter, and that would be included there as well under FWS. Remaining need here, this is sort of more need-based aid. This is not borrowed money, is about $11,000. They've also included direct loans here, subsidized and unsubsidized, to have Sally's remaining out-of-pocket cost is at $4,200. So that would be Sally's sort of financial need. And then her and her family would have to decide, okay, we got this remaining need. How are we going to meet that need? There's ways to reduce costs to meet that need, right? Think about what of those items are actual charges. I think about the items that are going directly to the institutions, right? Those are your actual charges here. Tuition and fees, food and housing if you're going to live on campus, right? Those are things going directly to the institution. But books, transportation, travel, personal living expenses, those are all estimates given from data from the institutions. They have to include that now. But those are things that you can mitigate as a student in a family. Can you commute? Can you save $11,000 and not live on campus? Is that possible? Is that housing an estimated thing, or is it an actual value to live on campus? Meal plans, right? We're thinking about dependent care. Are they giving you the most expensive meal plan, or is there a less of expensive option for you? Maybe a less costly dorm room, living off campus in an apartment with a bunch of friends, right? A lot of roommates, everyone's splitting rent. That could be a way to cut costs, or even transferring. That's a question I asked myself a lot when I went to the school. I could have gone to Moraine for free for 2 years via a program that they had. I chose not to do that. And sometimes I wonder, maybe I should have, and I could have saved quite a bit of money. But you know, college students, they want to have that 4-year experience. I get it, but it is an option to transfer in later and save money perhaps at a community college or any sort of other institution. All right, we'll now transition into understanding some financial aid offers here. Biggest thing with financial aid offers is there's really no set format for them, right? Institutions are going to design these in whatever way they see fit. They're all going to vary a little bit depending on the institution. So it's very important that you look out for the key things in an offer letter with students. The source and the type of aid in terms of gift aid or self-help aid, and identifying that with them. The terms of enrollment, is this an offer letter that you're going to give me on a semester basis, on a term basis, or a year basis? And then the total financial aid offer, right? Really trying to calculate what is the remaining out-of-pocket cost for that student and that family. So these are the questions that I would walk through with students, for example, in terms of their financial aid offers. Number one, figure out what the total cost of attendance is for that institution, for comparison's sake, for other institutions. What is their student aid index? Making sure that's correct on there as well. What is the student's financial aid eligibility? Are they eligible? And did they get anything in MAP and Pell? Identifying that. What types of financial aid were included? How much did they include in loans, for example? Did they throw in a giant Parent Plus loan in, for example? What is the ratio of gift aid to self-help aid? Was their financial need met? Doing that cost benefit analysis with them. And what is their total out-of-pocket cost then for that student and that family, either on a semester or a yearly basis, whatever makes more sense for them. Right, just touched on this a little bit, but these are the things I consider as really the ratio to gift aid and self-help aid. Generally, packages with more gift aid, of course, are going to be more appealing for students rather than more loans, because this is money you don't have to repay back. You want to make sure that that's renewable dollars as well, trying to mitigate the amount of money that students and families have to borrow and pay back later. If there are loan terms in there, or loans in general, what are those terms, right? Comparing the type of loans. How much of Parent Plus loans are they trying to include in there, right? Or can you mitigate the amount of direct subsidized or unsubsidized loans that you as a student are borrowing if you can meet that out-of-pocket cost? Did they cover the gap for you? How are you able to reduce those additional funds if there is a large gap of unmet financial need? Very important question to ask the administrators. Is this all part of a renewable award here? Or are half of the things you're including in this award, sort of just for my freshman year? I've had a lot of students who have had a couple of institutional scholarships that they didn't ask if they were renewable, but they were only for their freshman year at the institution. They come to their sophomore year and they look and they realize that $8,000 institutional scholarship's gone. Boom, that's another $8,000 now they need to meet an out-of-pocket cost. How are they going to do that? Very important to keep that down and double check with FAAs about it being renewable awards or not. And then any outside scholarships. Do you have a scholarship as a student in a family from, say, your local church that the FAA was not aware of at the time of packaging, and that's okay. They didn't include it in the offer letter. That's fine. If your out-of-pocket cost after all your aid is $5,000 and you got a $5,000 scholarship from the local church, beautiful. There's your aid bet. That's a outside scholarship you should consider, even if it's not a course in your offer letter. You have that in the back end. All right, we'll transition a little bit now into borrowing responsibility. I include these slides in here because loans are part of the financial aid process. They're going to be included in offer letters. Students will be agreeing to take out student debt, right? And because of that, there's a couple of things they have to do in order for that money to be dispersed to them. Or I'm sorry, I guess I should say to institutions on their behalf. So what are these requirements? The first being to complete entrance counseling, right? This provides basic information about managing student loans while they are in school, right? In terms of grace periods and in-school deferment, and then after college as well. Institutions will go ahead and usually email them. It can be part of their student portal. It's an online tool connected with the Department of Education. They have them do that, and they must do that. Otherwise, those loans can't be dispersed. Same with the master promissory note. After entrance counseling, they're going to sign this. It is a legal commitment to repay loans, right? And the loans, again, cannot be dispersed until that legal commitment is signed. Common misconception that I deal with students, specifically with all of the, I'd say, stuff in the news about just widespread loan forgiveness and cancellation, and that, I don't need to pay these loans back. A lot of students and my own friends who are adults, have this sort of misconception that they don't need to pay back their student debt. And I try and remind them all the time that that is not the case whatsoever. Please have students understand that when they are borrowing this money and they're signing this master promissory note, this is a promise that you must repay back these loans. And then complete exit counseling. This is after they leave school and maybe they drop below half-time enrollment or they graduate. This establishes repayment for them, talks about all of things for loans in terms of their interest rates, different types of repayment programs, what deferment and forbearances, cancellation, staying out of default, all of those things happens once they leave. It's called exit counseling, and that has to be complete as well. Consequences of not completing exit counseling could sometimes be withholding diplomas, certificates, etc. for students. Considerations for borrowing with students and families, right? Borrowers are not required to accept all the loans offered to them. I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with a student or a family who saw that they had, I don't know, $25,000 worth of debt in their offer letters. And they go, okay, great. That's great. My financial need was met. It's like, all right, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. But let's look at all this borrowed aid here. Are you willing to pay any of this in cash? Is there any sort of out-of-pocket cost you can meet? Mitigating debt along the way over the course of 4 years is going to be important. Having that conversation with them to say, you don't have to accept any of these loans or the full amount. You could take half. You could take 75% of them, 30% of them, whatever fits you. Only borrow what you necessarily have to. Now, loans from the Department of Education are going to have additional benefits versus, say, maybe a private loan. Some people get great deals on private loans. They get great rates. They have good deals. That's great. Good for them. Most of the folks I've worked with in my own personal experiences have not shared that experience, right? So from the Department of Education, at the very least, they have a fixed interest rate, which means that interest rate is not going to fluctuate throughout the time period of the loan. Subsidized and unsubsidized in terms of interest being covered sometimes by the federal government while students are attending school in a subsidized loan. You get grace periods, right? 6 months after you leave. Deferment and forbearance options, which is just temporarily postponing payments on a loan, moving deadlines a little bit, chunking up payments sometimes into smaller amounts. They are flexible with these. And then repayment plan options, right? We talk about extended and graduated repayment plans. Income-driven repayment plans are huge. A lot of the borrowers we work with here at the state sometimes are just have a monthly payment requirement of 0 because their income is low and they've enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan that doesn't allow them to then have a payment every single month. So it's a great option for a lot of our borrowers. Okay, I'm now going to just walk through probably my favorite tool on the student portal at isac.org. It's our financial aid comparison tool. I use this a lot when I work with students and families in the past. You can use this online and compare 3 schools at a time, or you can print these out and compare 10 schools at a time. It whatever really works for you, depending on the situation. If you want to work hands-on with the student, if they want to do this themselves, great. But what it's for is to try and organize these offer letters to look the same and tell the student the same kind of information in a clear, organized, and concise way. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of offer letters from institutions can be very confusing. They all look different. And for our first gen students specifically, they don't know how to read these things. They don't know what they mean, right? They need some additional help. So if we can give them a tool like this, where they're all going to look the same, perhaps it gives them and perhaps their parents, who are likely going to be, of course, not familiar with the college going process, an easier way to make a good cost benefit analysis to whatever institution that they want to attend. So I'm going to show you a couple of things here when you're going ahead and input a school's offer letter. First thing it's going to have you do, and I'm showing you the online tool here, is the cost of attendance, right? So they'll have you put the name of the school first, and they'll have you by category input these dollar amounts found on the offer letter. Tuition and fees, room and board, that'll be named to food and housing. Books, course materials, and equipment, or books and supplies, same thing, right? Transportation expenses, any sort of other personal miscellaneous expenses you need to include. They have a category for that. And then the student's student aid index. Once they do that, it's going to go ahead and have a financial need category sort of automatically filled for them based upon what they just inputted into that slide, right? And that'll be grayed out because that'll be automatically calculated based on what they put on the previous slide, right? So that'll be automatically shown there. Now we're gonna separate gift aid and self-help aid for the student. This is free money for them, right? That's the idea. So anything in a Pell Grant, let's put that in there. Did you have anything in a federal supplemental education opportunity grant? Now, sometimes that's listed pretty clearly as that. Sometimes it's included in an institutional award, and that's okay because there's 2 different spots to put that. any sort of ISAC grants and scholarships, MAP grant, any sort of other ISAC programs. This could be an education scholarship, veterans benefits, MTI, whatever it is. College grant and scholarship. This is the institutional aid. This is the presidential scholarship from Lewis University, right? They have those institutional names they give to their institutional awards. That goes in that category. And then other grants and scholarships not already reported. This could be local organizations that you know of that you're receiving aid from. Maybe it wasn't included in your offer letter. Maybe it is. You want to include that here so that you're having a sort of accurate reflection of that student's financial sort of need and analysis. They make an informed decision. Now we're going into the self-help aid portion of the tool. So the first thing they'll calculate is work study. Is work study included on the offer letter? Look for that term. Do they have a dollar amount there? Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. The limits are going to be dependent upon what the institution sets at. Again, this is money they are not receiving right away. They have to earn this money. They can do whatever they want with those funds. They don't need to use that full $2,000 towards their tuition and fees. They can spend all that money on clothes or food or video games. But a lot of institutions will include it as money towards their cost of attendance. The majority of students I know don't use all of it for their cost of attendance. So that's something to keep in mind and talk with the student about. This is now when you're talking about loans. So any sort of student loans here, direct subsidized, any unsubsidized loans, alternative loans. So maybe it's a private loan that the student and family is planning to take out. Maybe they already have this agreement. They have the terms. They're going to get the loans dispersed. That would be included there in alternative loans. And then Parent Plus loans. This is a big one. A lot of institutions will put Parent Plus loans, big amounts too, in offer letters to allow it to decrease what the student's out-of-pocket costs would look to be in terms of their financially being met. So that's a huge portion. We always have that there and put that dollar amount there. Then it'll go ahead and calculate the total amount of student loan aid. How much are they going to be borrowing on a yearly basis? Now, once they do that, here are the results. On the online tool, you can compare 3 schools at a time, and you can do this as many times as you want. So, College A, College B, College C. Without going into all the details here, I'll walk through all the values with you. For our students that we work with, right, on its face, College B looks like the best option, right? Why? Because the out-of-pocket costs say 0. And I know for the students and families we work with, that 0 is huge. They're going to see that and jump on it, right? And they're not going to be understanding a lot of the information included in the offer letter. When you look at the details of the offer letter, in College B, you're going to notice a $5,000 Parent Plus loan has been included in the offer letter to allow that out-of-pocket cost to be 0. Take a look at College A. A little more expensive out-of-pocket, cheaper than College C, but when I look at the Parent Plus loan section, and as well as some other, federal work study requirements there, I'm seeing nothing, right? There's no extra loans included in here for Parent Plus loans. Perhaps that may be more cost benefit, makes more sense for that student and that family because it's not asking them to borrow another $5,000. They just have to pay another $1,000 out of pocket. Now they can meet that with a $1,400 loan if they want to, or maybe they can just meet it with cash, depending on that student and that family. But really, College A is the most sort of cost-effective solution for the family versus College B that wants them to borrow more money. We'll transition now to some of our resources. We have our financially completion initiative here that we use through our GAP Access portal, where our high schools can track financial aid completion data, right? Not only FAFSA's alternative applications, but also the new online opt-out waiver. These rosters are uploaded via the State Board of Education. We get them, we upload them to the portal, and it is an easy way to use for compliance purposes for that financial aid application graduation requirement. Now, we know that a lot of our schools don't have access to matching yet and editing rosters. Some of the rosters may have been uploaded already. We're aware of that, but we haven't opened this up yet to counselors from our perspective quite yet. We're waiting on that data from the Department of Education. We rely on data from the federal government to make sure that there is an accurate matching. So we have to wait on that before we can open up all of the resources and tools on GAP Access. But know that this is available, but it hasn't quite opened all the way yet. I want to highlight our Illinois PACE symposiums. We have a couple coming up here, one this month and one in May. The first one on April 16th is going to be down in Champaign at the I Hotel. Then we have another one sort of up north here in the Chicagoland area at Elgin Community College on May 8th. This is where schools across our state can learn about different sort of resources and networking tools about implementing their own PACE frameworks here. So go ahead and scan the QR code or just visit our site at isac.org/PACE. Registration is open for both of the symposiums. Feel free to do so. In addition to that, we also have our half-day module PACE trainings we've been doing for this year. This is sort of a new training that we've been implementing, trying to sort of train PACE champions and get schools thinking about effective ways to build teams, implement a framework, use their community resources, all great details in our half-day module trainings. So part 2 of these trainings, modules 3 and 4, for registration is open. We have a couple coming up here, April 11th and April 18th. I believe registration is still open for these. Feel free to scan our code, visit our site, and take advantage of this free opportunity for this half-day training. I'll highlight the First Generation Scholars Network as well. Still sort of a new program that we are still trying to push across our state, trying to encourage our first-gen students to keep going, where we can connect them with a variety of first-gen events across the state, connect them with a mentor who's been through that process and can guide them a little bit on their first-gen struggles, and maybe more importantly, connect them to a first-gen program on a campus, right? So if there's prospective institutions in that they're interested in, letting them know that maybe this institution's got a really good first-gen program for them and others don't, can maybe sway their decisions and help them throughout their college-going process. And the moment you've all been waiting for, our CE and PD hours. I have a colleague who's going to open up the chat feature and provide you with the survey link. She has just done so. Bottom right-hand corner of your screen, little sort of message bubble. Looks like an iPhone message bubble. Click on the chat. It should open up automatically. If not, right-hand corner, you click on that. That's where the survey link is going to be. You can provide your feedback for today's session and request your C and PD hours. Do so by April 4th, which is Thursday at 5 p.m. This is close of business for us. So April 4th, the survey is going to close. Please do so by the deadline so we can award you your certifications. Specifically, if you are requesting our PD hours, you must submit your Illinois Educator Identification Number. If we don't see your Illinois Educator Identification Number, we cannot award you PD hours. So very important that you include that in the evaluation. Again, evaluation is going to be on the right-hand corner of your screen. Click on the chat, open that up, and you'll be able to do so. Deadline April 4th, 5 o'clock. And that is all we have for you. Hopefully this was an informative webinar with some of the processing delays and the packaging and some of the timing we know is going to be off. But that's how it gets broken down in terms of